On today's episode, we are back with another rapid-fire episode. So we've got a huge list of listener-submitted topics with no real context, and we're going to expand on those topics in whatever direction the conversation takes us. So buckle up. This episode of Tackle Talk starts right now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are brought to you by American Legacy Fishing. And new on the American Legacy Fishing front, first off, we have a brand new show. The American Legacy Fishing Show and Podcast has just released on both Spotify, Apple, iHeart, all those normal places. You should be able to search and find the American Legacy Fishing Show. And it's really fun. I'm getting to do that with Brian Dolney over from American Legacy Fishing. So he's a lot more on the industry side of things, and I'm just kind of more there for my opinions and how I feel about certain things. But we really go through, and kind of like this episode, right? We go into different topics that people from the American Legacy Fishing Elite membership and that private Facebook group, they get to submit a lot of topics. And if you follow the regular Facebook group, you can submit topics there too. But it's really fun. It's more like pardon the interruption style. So we will talk for a while, the bell will kind of ding, and then we go to the next topic on the list that we have already kind of chosen and planned out from things that people have submitted. So it is really fun. Go check it out if you haven't listened to it already. There are now 2 episodes out, I believe, and we are going to be releasing a new episode the first Thursday of every month. So go follow that on Apple, Spotify, all those places if you want more content from me and the boys over at American Legacy. Also, if you go over to the American Legacy website, you might notice some changes. Wink, wink, nod, nod. They have been hard at work to make sure that they are improving their website, and you can probably go over and start to see some of those changes and more streamlined options over on the American Legacy website. So go check it out if you haven't already. If it's been, a week or so since you've been on the ALF website, it would be worth a peek to kind of go look around. They also have some brand new stuff that's hit the website. The Rapala Jowlers that a lot of people have been waiting for are now over there. Some new colors, some new things from Berkeley. Really cool stuff. Go check them out. Again, www.americanlegacyfishing.com. And as always, you can use code TACKLETALK5 for an extra 5% off both regularly priced and on sale items. So you can use that code. It's stackable on the already great sales that American Legacy Fishing is running. Go check them out, www.americanlegacyfishing.com, code TACKLETALK5. Okay, folks, really quick, we have some fresh results from Major League Fishing's Stage 3 at Lake Murray in Columbia, South Carolina from March 6th through 9th that we have to get to before we get to the rest of today's episode. So this was a very tight, competitive event at Lake Murray, which ended up with a lot of familiar faces to us here at Tackle Talk in your top 10. In fact, I think 7 of the top 10 had been past guests on this show. So some names that we're going to be very familiar with when we read down this list. So let's get into it. Your top 10 from the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour Stage 3 at Lake Murray were 10th place, Jake Lawrence, 9th place, Alton Jones Jr., 8th went to Matt Becker, 7th, Jeff Sprague, 6th place, Brian Thrift, 5th went to Brent Ayler, 4th, Mark Daniels Jr., 3rd, Marshall Robinson, 2nd, Jacob Wheeler, and 1st place, the homie himself, as he continues to show that he is a true phenom and a force to be reckoned with on the BPT. His 2nd win in as many years, Drew Gill.
And now, bringing him up, his 2nd win on the Bass Pro Tour, taking home the Power Stop of Break, Stage number 3, Lake Murray, presented by Strike King Wing. He is Drew Gill, coming up with 58 pounds, 2 ounces, Big Bass 508. My man, two. I think you joined a group of 9 anglers who have won more than one event.
Lurch, I never dreamed I would even get to be on this platform, much less win 1, much less win 2. Dude, I'm over the moon. I can't, I'm going to say a whole lot of words to try and quantify what this feels like, but none of it would do it justice. I mean, even if this is the last tournament I'm ever in the top 10, I'm going to make sure to soak it up right now. So I'm tickled pink to get to win another one of these. Is something I will cherish forever.
I've got one more question, and the question is, are you ready to hoist that and be crowned?
100%.
Yes. Is that a yes?
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, he's going to come over and grab the trophy, and when he does, make some noise for your Power Stop Brakes Stage 3 Lake Murray, presented by Strike King champion, none other than Drew Gill!
So a massive congratulations to our friend Drew Gill and the rest of your top 10. Again, like we said, some familiar faces in there. Past guests at Tackle Talk: Wheeler, Becker, Alton, Ayler, Thrift, Sprague, and of course, your winner, Drew. So he's driving back home right now, 150 grand richer with another shiny red trophy in the passenger seat. So congratulations to Drew Gill, your Stage 3 winner at Lake Murray. Also, I know we don't normally cover it, but the NPFL, the National Professional Fishing League, just kicked off its season at Santee Cooper, and the NPFL, you'll remember, actually banned forward-facing sonar for this season. So I feel like there's a little bit more attention being paid to how the NPFL season goes this year, and there are a ton more notable anglers on their roster this year than the past few years, which is evident when I read this top 10 from last week. That's the reason we're going into this. The top 10 might shock you. So the NPFL's top 10 from Santee Cooper were 10th place Buddy Gross, 9th Buck Mallory, 8th Greg Hackney, 7th Keith Bardolph, 6th Patrick Walters, 5th Hank Cherry, 4th went to Bill Lowen, 3rd was Caleb Kufall, 2nd Corey Casey, and your winner, the great Jason Christie. Now, that, folks, legitimately sounds like a Bassmaster Elite Series top 10. You have Buddy Gross, Greg Hackney, Patrick Walters, Hank Cherry, Bill Lowen, Caleb Kufall, and Jason Christie. So the NPFL, I guess, is just no longer this, redheaded stepchild of, the tournament circuits, the sort of Johnny-come-lately that tried to compete with Bassmaster and MLF. They are now keeping up with the big boys. That top 10 there just proves it. How many big names are fishing with the NPFL this year? And I've been skeptical the past few years for sure. You've heard me talk about it, but the results don't lie, and I think we will probably have to at least keep a closer eye on the NPFL moving forward to see if they can keep this momentum up. All right, folks, today we are going to get into another rapid fire episode. And these are really fun because it's almost a different take on the mailbag. The mailbag is a lot more like you submit very detailed individual questions about certain circumstances or what you're dealing with, or they're a lot more detailed and drawn out, where with like a rapid fire episode, we've only done this once before, but this is basically like topic submissions. So this is almost like word association. You get, one word or a couple words that people will give you, and then we're going to expand on those and talk about them in kind of whatever direction the conversation flows and wherever my brain kind of goes with it. It is a lot more free reign, a lot more open-ended, which is a lot of fun versus what we normally do in the mailbag. So I'm not going to waste a ton of time here today. I'm excited. I've only very briefly seen a lot of these topics, just enough to kind of import them into the voice system that we use here to kind of announce each of these topics as we go through them. So I haven't really got a lot of time to, plan or think my thoughts through on a lot of these. So this will be a lot of fun just to kind of see what you guys have in terms of things you want to hear us talk about. So let's jump right in here. The first topic is going to be
favorite professional angler.
Wow. Okay. Start off with a doozy here. Favorite professional angler. I'm going to narrow this down to a current angler to start, I think, because that obviously, there are names that I would love to toss out for this. Bill Dance, Jimmy Houston, Hank Parker, Denny Brower, so many of those greats from the past. But there's also a ton of current anglers that I absolutely love to watch. And so many of them we've been fortunate enough to have on the show over the years, become friends with, have great conversations with, people like Wheeler and Thrift, Skeet, Ike, Drew Gill, Hank Cherry, Gussie, Rick Clunn, Taku, John Cruz, Matty Wong, Boyd Duckett, Matt Becker, Alton Jones Jr. There are so many people that we've had the pleasure of getting to know, and I do really, really enjoy watching. But I'm going to pull a dark horse out of the hat here for my favorite angler currently. This is someone I've always had a really, really big admiration and amount of respect for, and it's going to be Steve Kennedy. There's just something so cool about Steve that you can't quite put your finger on, but he's just got something about him that I feel like a lot of other guys don't have. Like, I love watching Steve get all giddy, like back wherever they were, where he was a few years ago fighting those big smallmouth in that crazy current below a dam, trying to keep his boat from being, pushed away and rushed away with the current while fighting these 4 and 5 pound smallmouth and just laughing and having a great time. Watching his, like his boat and his jerseys and stuff that are always so clean. He's not sponsored up like crazy. He might have Bass Cat on there and that's it. And the rest of it is just that signature, blue tiger. He's a big Auburn fan, I think. I'm pretty sure that's where it comes from, being from Alabama. But just like, almost the antithesis of what a lot of these other anglers are. And I think that's what makes him so much fun to watch. So rather than give you like some of these, big cliche answers, that's going to be mine. So to answer this topic or this question, I'm going to say Steve Kennedy. All right, next topic here is going to be
new lures.
Well, that's pretty open-ended there, too. Okay, so let's take this to, I have in the past couple days seen a few new lures either announced or kind of teased. So the first one was an actual official announcement from Great Lakes Finesse, where we're getting a brand new shape in the GLF lineup, and they're calling it the Ned Bug. So what I read, it's like 2.3 inches, comes in a 6-pack, matte finish. It said it's going to be available in both floating and neutrally buoyant options, and it just kind of looks like a micro crawfish, except instead of the 2 big pinchers, it's got these 2 antennas that just come off of it, again, giving it more of like a bug profile than a craw profile. It's a little longer and a little skinnier too than something like a snack craw. It's actually got a little bit more of a traditional craw body on it, I would say. I'm excited for this one because microplastics around here, they're cool. They will always catch fish. They play here in the Midwest no matter what. If you throw them in the right spot, this one is, I would say, right up my alley. The other one I saw was from Z-Man, and Z-Man is teasing that a new jackhammer is coming soon. And this one I'm a little bit more skeptical of because I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to do with the jackhammer what they did with the Evo last year, and they're just going to come out with a tungsten version. Nothing else different, just a tungsten version of the bait we already have. That's not that exciting to me. I don't think there's a giant difference between the regular Evo and the tungsten Evo. Regular Evos shoot just regular chatterbaits, the $4 ones, or regular jackhammers work just fine for me. Not something I would say I'm super excited about right now. But who knows? I could be wrong. That could not be what it is. But if I had to bet, I think that's where that one is probably heading. All right, next topic here is going to be
fishing shoes.
I might be in the minority on this one, but I think like those weird rubber shoes that you see advertised to anglers all the time, like the, whatever they are, Extra Tough or whatever those brands are, I think those look silly and they're completely unnecessary. I'm basically like a athletic slides or barefoot guy most of the time if I'm in a boat or if I'm in my kayak. Very rarely do I have shoes on if I'm in either of those. If I do have something on, it's probably either cold outside or I'm wading. Obviously, I don't wade in slides. You don't want to do that around here unless you want to end up with a dirty needle or a shard of glass in your foot after about 30 seconds in the water. All that stuff is everywhere around here. So if I'm wet wading, I usually have a cheaper pair of like actual wading boots on, the real light kind of neoprene zip up versions where they're really close and hug your leg really tight and they go just past your ankles. I think mine are from a brand called Hodgman. I think they came off of Amazon. They're like $30 or $40, I think. And then obviously if I'm in cold water, I'm in waders or I'm in my ice suit with actual boots on. But just for being out there in the summer on a kayak or a boat, I am definitely a barefoot guy a lot of the times, or just like flip-flops or slides versus those quote-unquote fishing shoes. All right, next one here is going to be
balsa versus plastic.
I wowould say 95% of the time I'm throwing plastic, if I'm being honest. Regular plastic square bills, regular plastic, mid divers. My only real exceptions are when I'm deep cranking. I actually really like DTs from Rapala, which all of those are balsa. I think I probably deep crank a DT, I'd say about 2 to 3 times as often as I crank something like a Strike King XD or some other plastic deep diving crankbait. So that works for me. And then then I would also say I throw balsa square bills and stuff like the Black Label baits from Cliff Pace that we talked about in the Breaking the Mold series a few weeks back. I throw those more in like specialized situations where I'd say I'm like shallow cranking around a lot of wooded cover. That's where I tend to kind of go toward a balsa bait versus a plastic. So I'd say most of the time, if I'm in, 8 foot or shallower, I'm probably plastic most of the time. And then for my deeper stuff, I do crank balsa DTs from Rapala just because it's what I've always used and what I feel comfortable with. All right, let's keep moving here. Next, we've got...
Are there too many fishing podcasts?
Oh boy. Okay. How am I going to navigate this without getting myself in trouble? Let's see if I can do it. First knee-jerk reaction, I think it's easy to say, yeah, holy smokes, there are like 50 new fishing podcasts started every day, and it's completely oversaturated. On a pure number side of things, yes, I think there are probably too many for the size of the niche that is fishing, especially the bass fishing side. I would say yes, from like a sheer number of podcasts versus number of people interested in listening to those podcasts, yes, we're probably oversaturated in the bass fishing podcast world. But that doesn't mean that people shouldn't start new ones. I'm not going to sit here and try to gatekeep podcasting. That's silly too. I'm sure when I started Tackle Talk back in the day in like 18 or 19, even though there were only like 1 or 2 other bass fishing podcasts even out at the time, I'm sure people that had like regular radio shows or regular TV shows or successful YouTube channels thought, who is this kid? What makes him so special? Why does some no-name kid in Southern Ohio deserve a bass fishing podcast? And the answer is that it's not about deserving or not deserving anything. Anyone is entitled to chase that dream and start something like this if they want to. I just think it's important to have something unique to say. And then I get this way too, right? When I see all of these new shows pop up, I'll be 100% honest with you guys. Sometimes I'll see a new bass fishing show that gets announced on, Instagram or whatever out of nowhere. And they obviously have a lot of funding. They have like 0 episodes, but somehow they already have an awesome looking, multi-thousands, tens of thousands of dollars studio and set and equipment and graphics. And I'm just like, what the heck, right? I can't compete with that. You guys know that I am in right now, as we speak, like an 8 foot by 8 foot room with $15 worth of Home Depot carpet nailed to the walls and a desk on Amazon that I bought for probably $60 and 2 $20 LED lights. And that is most of what I'm working with here for a quote unquote set or studio. I don't have the means to build a nice studio or have state of the art microphones and audio equipment and all of that. And I get discouraged sometimes when I see that come from other folks. I have friends that have really helped kind of like ground me on that one a little bit, where it's like, dude, stop comparing yourself to people. Just keep your nose down, do what you do. But at the end of the day, I just keep telling myself, it's not the price of the microphone that matters. It's the value of what you say into it. And I really stand by that. So are there too many out there? Probably. Does that mean that people shouldn't start them though? No. Just make sure that your show is unique and provides something of value that those other shows don't. I think if you do that, you'll be successful. And I think if you don't do that, you're going to have a much tougher time. All right, next topic here.
Wipers or tiger muskies?
If we're talking about which ones I target more or like catching more, I guess my truthful answer anyway, would have to be neither. I've never caught a tiger muskie in my life. I've only caught a handful of wipers in my life, and all of those were on accident. So given the choice, I guess I'd probably say wipers because they're fun as heck. I just don't usually target them or have the opportunities to target them around here as much as I would like to. I spend most of my time on regular bass, on largemouth and smallmouth. But I'm assuming you asked this because they're both hybrid species, right? Wipers are half striper and half white bass. Tiger muskies, I think anyway, are half pike and half muskie. But around here, the hybrid species that we target a lot more often than any of those is sawguy. So if I can answer your A or B question with an option C, I'm going to say sawguy. Next here.
Worst overall rod brand?
Woof. Okay, here we go again. I feel like no matter what I say, I'm going to get some flack on this one, so just brace yourselves, I guess. But I'm going to say my number one answer, if I have to pick my least favorite, or I would say quote-unquote worst overall rod brand, I'm going to go with Favorite. Favorite rods. I'm sorry, kids. I know that breaks some of your hearts out there, I'm sure, but I have never been impressed with favorite rods. They are just way more about cosmetics and looks than fishability. Always have been. I feel like always will be. I mean, that's why they sold rods with every MLB team on them for a while, or these really bright rods with all of these YouTube guys promoting them, day in and day out. They are very much a hyped up rod that just doesn't back it up in terms of feel and fishability. Now, are they fishable? Yeah, they're fishable. That's true. They're rods that will work. You can go out, you can catch fish on them, but I think they are wildly overhyped for what they are. I think they're cheap Chinese rods marketed to kids with flashy paint jobs and an army of YouTube influencers. So let's go to the next topic before I get myself in trouble on that one.
Dobbins Frenzy Rods.
Oh, no. Okay. Maybe we shouldn't have moved on so quick. This one could be kind of controversial too. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Dobbins Frenzy rods, to my knowledge anyway, are exclusive rods made by Dobbins and only sold at Dick's Sporting Goods. So here's the real deal on these rods from what I've been told and from what I've heard. GSM obviously bought Dobbins rods. GSM, I think, then worked out a deal with Dick's Sporting Goods for an exclusive rod that can only be bought at Dick's, and they wanted it to hit a very low price point, and they wanted it to have cork handles. Now, if you've ever paid attention to Gary's rods that he's made in the past, that doesn't work. Those two things don't go together. Gary has gone on record, even on our show, I think, when he was talking about the Fury way back in the day, which is $129, he said there was no way to make that rod with cork handles and it be something worth putting out at that price point. Now, we get a $50 cheaper rod with just that. And guess what? If you think that that didn't come with a severe impact to the product itself, you're crazy. So I will just tell you what I've been told by other people about these rods that I trust. Yes, they have the Dobbins name on them. Yes, Gary was somewhat involved in the process, but I wouldn't spend my $80 on these rods. And that comes from someone that loves Dobbins rods and tries to keep it real with you guys every step of the way. This was most likely a big retailer strong-arming a big equity company into strong-arming Gary into making these rods at a certain price point. That's my honest take on these. I wouldn't buy them. I would save up your money. Another $50 gets you a Fury, which is a great rod that was designed right, has the right R&D behind it, has the stamp of approval from Gary on it from years and years and years of use and testimonials. That's my 2 cents. I would save up for a Fury. I would not take the chance on these Frenzy rods because I believe there were probably some pretty big corners cut to get them at that price point. Okay, next up here.
PFD Choice.
I'm assuming this means inflatable versus non-inflatable, maybe static. I can't remember what they actually call those, but basically whether it inflates or not, because brand doesn't really matter much to me. For me, I like inflatable PFDs for the simple reason that they're less bulky when you're fishing. For me, the name of the game with a personal flotation device or life jacket or whatever you want to call it is how can I find one with the least negative impact on my range of motion, my comfort, and my enjoyability out there on the water while still potentially saving my life if I need it. My choice is inflatable. Just make sure, obviously, to check it more often. There's more things that can go wrong with an inflatable jacket, so make sure that you are servicing it when it needs service, you're replacing the cartridge when it needs replaced, just double checking to make sure that, heaven forbid, if you do need it, it is ready to save your life. Okay, let's keep moving on. Next, we've got...
Cat Fisherman.
Can I pass on a topic? I'm just kidding. If you're a cat fisherman out there, good for you. As long as you're not one of those stereotypical cat fishermen that, leaves their trash and beer cans and chicken liver containers and line and hooks and cigarettes and all that on the bank, because those cat fishermen can... this is a family-friendly show, so I will hold my tongue on this, but those cat fishermen can get lost. The other thing I'm not a huge fan of is pay lakes, and I know that's a big thing for cat fishermen, especially around here. There's just something so antithetical to what I love about fishing, about going and paying to fish a glorified giant puddle that had these big catfish transferred from their lake or their river or wherever they were from and put them into this basically giant barrel that now I can go pay to try and catch them them out of, and those fish are eventually going to die and not have a great life in there. That's just not what I love about fishing. I know some people really love the fact of just being able to go somewhere where they know there are giant fish, but that comes at what I would call an ethical cost, which I am not okay with. So next up here, we've got
Bassmaster Classic predictions.
Okay, like a winner, I'm going to say, if you want like an overall prediction, I think the weights are going to be great. I think the last time that we were here was 2021 in Lake Ray Roberts for the Bassmaster Classic, and I think the water was up, it was muddy, and I feel like a lot of people's game plans got thrown off a little bit. This time, I think we should probably, at least from what I know, be a lot more okay. So if we're going to go with like a winner, though, your two favorites, according to, fantasy fishing picks across the board right now, are probably Chris Zaldain first, and then I think the other day I saw Milliken was second, Lee Livesey was third, and then I think Jordan Lee was fourth. But I'm actually going to go with a gentleman that was in the top 10 the last time the Bassmaster Classic was at Ray Roberts, which again was 2021. I'm going to go with Patrick Walters. All right, what's next here?
Salt versus no salt worms.
I am a less salt guy myself most of the time. Salt, I think, does two things in plastic production, both of which I generally don't want. One, it makes that bait sink faster, which, again, I don't really care about. I can always make a bait sink faster if I want to with different rigging options and weights and things like that, but I can't make a bait float better usually. So I would much rather a bait float better to start and then have me adjust it as needed. Way easier to make a floating bait sink better than to make a sinking bait float better, I guess. So that's my number one. Number two, though, more salt content means that bait is usually cheaper to make for the manufacturer. So it's a cost-cutting thing that a lot of manufacturers will do too. Again, that's obviously not a selling point for me, so I usually lean toward less salt. All right, what we got next?
Best jig heads for moving water.
This is going to be a super quick one. A straight up ball head. I think that's the OG for a reason. Ball heads play in most situations, to be honest. Moving water is definitely one of those situations where you have to have ball heads in your tackle box. All right, let's keep moving here. Next, we've got
round versus low profile bait casters.
I'm low profile all day. Round reels are really weird to me. And when we say round reels, we mean things like the Calcutta or the Cardiff or things like that. Those weird looking ones that look almost like either they're from 60 years ago or they're like saltwater fishing reels. It's 2025. Low profile bait casters are where it's at. And to be honest, that's what 95% of you out there are throwing anyway. That's what you think of when you think of a normal bait caster these days. All right, next up.
Dark or bright colors for muddy or stained water.
Okay, so I'm actually going to say bright colors for stained water and dark colors for muddy water, because I believe those are two different things. But for dirty, muddy water, black is still my favorite color. It always has been, always will be, even though the more I learn about these fish and their senses, the color in muddy water probably doesn't matter at all. If we're being honest, it's mostly a confidence thing, I would guess. I still like the contrast. I know you guys have heard me talk about that a trillion times on this show. When the water gets dirty, I love contrast. Okay, next up here we've got...
Why does all pro bass fishing coverage suck?
Oh boy, shots fired. Okay, I don't think it sucks. I just think that we're all very, very jaded at this point about everything, but especially pro bass fishing coverage. Because back in the day, bass fishing coverage was just like a, semi-scripted, pre-taped, heavily edited TV package that was recorded and produced after the tournament was over, when the guys knew what to prep, knew what to talk about, knew the results, and they just sounded like obviously they knew what was going on more because they've already had time to prep and watch it and analyze it and all that kind of stuff. Now, these guys have to sit there and announce 8 straight hours of live coverage for like 3 or 4 days straight. It is mind-boggling. They went from having to fill, a planned and edited 1-hour show to an unedited, unplanned 32 hours. That's so much time to fill with a sport like fishing that has such little action and excitement compared to other sports. boats. And then we've got multiple live cameras and mic setups and electronics mirroring packages in some of the most remote places and lakes around the country, all trying to get signal and put together a live broadcast with pieces that are happening hundreds of miles apart from each other when you think about where the anglers are versus, how big the spread of the lake is versus the actual TV studio and set that's usually in some random location in the US that doesn't move. So cut them a break, right? It's very, very hard to fill that much time with as little action and video coverage as they're working with and to be able to put it all together on the fly in real time. I think if you guys saw what actually goes on behind the scenes of some of these broadcasts that you get to watch for free, by the way, most of the time, I would say you'd probably have a very different tune. And I think both MLF and Bass are doing a great job this year stepping up their coverage, but I just think the cool thing to do now is complain, unfortunately. So that's my rant on fishing coverage. All right, what we got next?
One technique for the rest of your life, drop shot or mid-strolling?
Neither. Next question.
Length versus weight of fish, which is more impressive?
When I was younger, it was obviously like all weight. Your PB was weight, your tournaments were weight, and I still think that's true around here for largemouth, but I've said it before, around here, we measure largemouth in weight and we measure smallmouth in length. Don't ask me why. I don't know when that started. It's just how it goes. How long was my PB largemouth? I actually don't know, but I can dang sure tell you the weight of it. And same thing with my PB smallmouth. How heavy was it? Now I know about how heavy it was, but it's not nearly as important to me as it was hitting that 21-inch mark with the mouth closed on a certified board. So that's a loaded question, I think. In terms of what's purely more impressive, I think it follows that scale. I'm more impressed by the weight of a largemouth, and I'm more impressed by the length of a smallmouth. It's a weird answer, but that's just how we operate around here where I live, and I can't explain it, I guess. All right, next up.
Lure you've never caught a fish on?
Oh, wow. Never caught a fish on a certain lure. What lure would that be? That's hard because I feel like I've caught at least a fish or a few fish on almost everything. Some way more than others, obviously, but I'm trying to think. I've got one. I've never caught a fish, at least to my knowledge, on a true Jika rig. And that's basically like a Tokyo rig without the longer wire section between your hook and the weight. So, a Tokyo rig is more like almost a mini heavy duty drop shot, where a Jika rig is more like that weight is actually attached right there with like, an O-ring or right at the eyelet of your hook. Other than that, I don't know. I almost said spy bait, but I've definitely caught fish on a spy bait before. I just work it more like a, wake bait or a top water than I do down deep like some other people do. But yeah, I guess if I had to pick one, I don't think I've ever caught a fish on a true Jika rig before. Okay, what's up next?
Reel maintenance.
My reel maintenance plan is to dunk it in the water every once in a while on accident and send it. I guess I'm semi-joking there, but I'm also semi-serious. Unfortunately, I do that sometimes on purpose, sometimes on accident, but that's how my reels get cleaned a lot of times, is usually accidentally taking a dip in the water when I'm on the kayak or something. But other than that, like on the real talk of what I do to kind of service my reels, I oil them maybe once or twice a year, just really quick, open up the ports, put a little dab of oil in there. I'll clean them off if they get muddy. I will grease the worm shaft, all that normal stuff, but I actually take them to a shop in town for like a deep clean, basically when they start to feel or sound really bad. And I know it's not what you should do, but it's kind of like only going to the dentist when your tooth actually hurts versus just making sure that you're going to the dentist so that your tooth doesn't hurt. I understand that that is probably what I should be doing. I should be taking these reels in every, year or couple years and just having them serviced anyway, but I take them in for a cleaning when they just feel or sound awful, when they sound like a banshee, when you're reeling it in, when you can feel that grinding. That's when I'll take them to the shop. Usually the good news is you can probably find a local shop that will do it fairly inexpensive. I think our shop around here, now don't quote me, I think it's like 10 or 20 bucks to have a reel completely taken apart and cleaned and greased and all that kind of stuff. Really not that bad, especially if you only do it like I do every probably 3 or 4 years. All right, next question.
What is something the fishing industry is lacking today?
Oh, that's a good one. I think this is actually our last one for the day here too. So good topic, I guess, to end this on. I'll keep this fairly short, but I'm going to say parity. I think the industry itself, anyway, the fishing industry, has gotten so small in terms of the number of companies that are out there. Almost all of your tackle companies now are owned by those 4 or 5 big conglomerate equity or capital companies, and that hurts overall product development and innovation by just kind of stifling a lot of the competition that used to exist in the fishing industry. So I think that's what we're missing. We're missing those people in all of these companies that used to be independent and had some owner or, some founder that really truly cared about that company, that wanted to push the envelope, that wanted to make sure the quality of the product was high because their name was on it and it was their livelihood. It was how they paid the bills and, made sure the electric stayed on and they fed their family. And those are the people that really at the end of the day want to make sure they make a great product because they have to, because it's their livelihood. I think that's what we're missing nowadays with a lot of these companies. That used to be the case, not so much anymore. All right, everybody, that is today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all. As always, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon, wherever you listen to podcasts. Go subscribe. Go leave us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify if you can. That helps us out tremendously. Be sure to go over to the website, tackletalkpodcast.com. There we still have the store up and running. We have shirts. We have a couple coffee mugs left. We have stickers and decals and all kinds of stuff over there. You can go check it out. You can also submit your own mailbag question to be heard on an upcoming episode. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast, and we will see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.